All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a technical report that approaches a UAP sighting in a totally different way. See, it ignores the usual questions of what it was or who was flying it, and instead asks one simple, powerful question: how? This is being treated as a straight-up engineering problem, and we're about to walk through how you might reverse engineer a solution.
Yeah, that was the actual directive from the witness who wrote this whole analysis. Treat this as a serious physics problem. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're stripping away all the speculation about, where it came from, and we're just looking at this through the lens of pure physics. It's all about reverse engineering what was seen.
So let's set the scene. This all happened back in 2020. Remember the COVID lockdowns? The skies were eerily quiet. Almost no planes, not much traffic on the ground. Perfect conditions for observation, right? And the whole goal of this analysis wasn't just to say, hey, I saw something weird. No, the goal was to build a real, testable, falsifiable scientific hypothesis that could explain every single detail.
So the big question is, how can science even begin to deconstruct an event that seems, well, impossible? Let's dive in and see how a really methodical, layered analysis can take on even the most bizarre stuff by just breaking it down piece by piece, using the language of physics.
Okay, so first things first, we got to establish the hard facts. What exactly was seen?
So, right off the bat, these properties create a real puzzle. I mean, a silent, basketball-sized object just hovering with no propellers, no jets, nothing. That's already weird. But here's the really critical clue. The report says it looked like a pure body of light, with those stellar diffraction spikes, like a star. It wasn't a physical thing being lit up from the outside. That little detail, it's going to be key.
And then we get to the most baffling part of the whole encounter. As this thing passed directly overhead, the red light just winked out, and for a moment it revealed a perfectly transparent sphere, and inside, a human figure looking down. Then just as fast as it happened, poof, it was back to being a red ball of light. This little phase change, this is the key diagnostic event for the entire analysis.
So how do you even start to make sense of that? Well, the witness did something really smart. They framed the problem around two distinct, competing hypotheses.
And this slide illustrates the central puzzle perfectly. You've got two ideas. Hypothesis A: the anomaly is local. The operator is physically inside this little sphere, which would mean its interior is somehow bigger than its exterior. Think like a TARDIS from Doctor Who, right? Or, hypothesis B, it's a remote channel. The operator isn't there at all. They're somewhere else, looking through this sphere like it's a window. So, is it a vehicle or is it a viewport?
Okay, so let's follow the breadcrumbs. Let's look at the physical clues and see how they help us choose between these two ideas. And this is where the analysis gets really specific. That moment of transparency, that's our first huge clue. The report is very clear on this. There was zero optical distortion, no scattering, no absorption of light. That means it couldn't be glass, it couldn't be plastic, it couldn't be any known material. It was as optically perfect as a pure vacuum. So, if it's not made of matter, what is it? Well, this points us away from chemistry and straight into the deep end of physics. The analysis suggests the sphere wasn't an object in the normal sense. It was a metric boundary surface. Think of it as a pure field, or an interface between two different regions of spacetime. Yeah, this is a concept straight out of general relativity, like the edge of a wormhole. Okay, clue number 2, the way it moved. The report stresses that it was perfectly smooth. Constant velocity, no jittering. You know how a drone is always making those tiny little corrections to stay stable? There was none of that. And this, the analysis concludes, is the precise kinematic signature of what's called a metric drive. Basically, an Alcubierre-class warp drive. It's not pushing against the air, it's moving spacetime itself. All right, so let's take a step back. We've got a non-material object, powered by a warp drive. I know, that sounds like it's pulled directly from Star Trek. But here's the thing. The report makes a powerful argument that our understanding of physics on this is actually changing, and it points to some very recent, very real, peer-reviewed science that's kind of rewriting the rules on what we thought was possible.
Yeah, see, concepts like warp drives and stable wormholes, for decades, they were considered basically forbidden by physics. They all seem to require this exotic, negative energy stuff that probably doesn't exist. But what's so cool is that new theories, like from the last few years, are suggesting that maybe we don't need it after all. The energy requirements are still, they're astronomical, absolutely huge,
But the key is, they might no longer be physically impossible.
And this table here, it just sums up that shift perfectly. We're literally moving from the probably impossible column over to the possible and principle column. Now that might sound like a tiny change in wording, but let me tell you, in physics, the difference between impossible and just incredibly ridiculously difficult is, well, it's everything.
So, armed with this updated understanding of physics, the analysis can start to put all the puzzle pieces together. We can try to assemble all these clues into one single coherent system.
And when you start thinking about it like an engineer, hypothesis B, the whole remote channel idea, it just starts to make a lot more sense. I mean, think about it. Why would you build a tiny 22-centimeter vehicle to cram a person into? It's way more logical to build a remote probe. And the witness saw several of these things. A low-altitude patrol of crewed vehicles seems kind of unlikely. A swarm of remote sensor probes? That makes a lot more operational sense.
So, the next question is, how would a remote channel like this even work? The report gets into it, proposing a model based on traversable wormhole theory. It goes something like this. You create two connected mouths or ends of the channel, together at the same location. Then, you leave one mouth at your command facility, and you physically transport the other mouth, which becomes the mobile probe. The connection between them remains, almost like an invisible, infinitely long fiber optic cable, letting you send power and data through it no matter how far apart they get.
And that leads us to the final, unified theory proposed in the report. It's called a remotely powered traversable-channel probe. Let's call it an RPTCP for short. So what is it? It's a small probe powered remotely through that space-time channel. That channel also acts as a perfect zero-lag optical link. And that red light? The theory is that it's a byproduct of the metric drive field that's moving the whole thing around.
Now, what's so important about this is that it isn't just a cool story to tell. It's a scientific hypothesis. And to prove that, the report concludes by laying out specific, testable predictions. For instance, if that red light is coming from the drive system, it should be highly polarized, just like a laser. You should be able to pick up a tiny local gravitational anomaly near the probe with the right equipment. This is what makes it real science. It's falsifiable.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought from this whole analysis. The author basically treats the observation itself as an existence proof. The logic is simple. The technology was observed, therefore it must be possible. The only task left for us is to figure out the physics. It's a challenge, really, to discover the mechanisms behind something that we used to think was flat out impossible.